Hi, everybody. Michael DDA here. Thank you for joining me. Last week, Jacob died. Oh, my goodness. What a blessed man. He was on it until the day he died. Unlike Isaac, who was willing to give his blessing to Esau. What was wrong with him? Rebecca knew better. But Jacob, he was on it. Wait until we just remember what he said last week. We talked about he's going to tell his sons what shall befall them in the last days. And we found out, really with the help of Yasher, that the last days that he was talking about was the last days of their time in Egypt. That has interesting significance too. Because remember, when we talk about the 430 days that we were in Egypt, that is including all the time that that time started when Abraham was 70 years old. 70. So that was this time in Canaan, as well as this time in Egypt. That was counted in the 430 years. Few people understand that. They've never figured it out. We're going to get some information today that's going to help you see that more clearly. We, Israel's seed, with Jacob and his sons, were only in Israel for 210 years. Oh my goodness. What shall befall you in the last days? Yes, this is what we're talking about, the last days in Egypt. But that's why I say, in a sense, if we're Yehovah's son, we're dwelling in the land of Egypt even now. If we have circumcised ourselves, come out of the world, left that government, joined ourselves to Yehovah's government, and came into covenant with him, we're dwelling in Egypt. Well, how much longer is that going to be before Yehovah brings us back to the land? Won't that be interesting? So, we tend to call these the blessings that he blessed his sons with. But these weren't all blessings. In fact, I would say most of them were not blessings. Look at Reuben. Unstable as water, he shall not excel, because he went to his father's bed when you defiled it on the couch. Look at Simeon and Levi. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. That's not a blessing. Judah, he had a little bit more. Went on and on. Talked about until Shiloh comes. We found out that Shiloh was probably going to be Moses until Moses comes. And to him shall be the obedience of the people. Talked about Zebulun, haven for ships. That was okay. Issachar, strong donkey lying between two burdens. Look at Issachar is going to be a band of slaves. Well, that doesn't sound like a blessing to me. Dan shall judge his people as one who judges Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper upon the path. Bites the horse's heel so that the rider shall fall backwards. Gad, a troop shall tramp upon him. A troop shall tramp upon him, but he shall triumph in the last. Yeah, so these are not all positive things. But look at what, this is why I say Jacob was on it. He knew that somebody, in fact, I've got it here. Let me just read it. Was in the first verse, because we were talking about the last days. Listen to this. For I know that many and grievous troubles will befall you in the last days in the land. This is Jacob talking the equivalent of what's going to be coming in chapter 50 or chapter 49 that I'm reading right now. Yeah, your sons and your sons' sons shall only Yea, your sons and your sons' sons only serve Yehovah, and he will save you from all trouble. And it shall come to pass when you shall go after Yehovah, go after Elohim to serve him, and will teach your sons after you and your sons' sons to know Yehovah. Then Yehovah will raise up unto you and your sons a servant from among your sons, and Yehovah will deliver you through his hand from all affliction, and bring you out of Egypt, and bring you back to the land of your fathers to inherit it securely. We're talking about Moses coming. And he is what they talked about here with Judah. Where'd it go? Judah. He's Shiloh. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. Remember, he's the king of Israel. Nor the lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes. Who's Shiloh? It's Moses. Oh, I know. All the Christians want to make it Jesus. Oh my gosh. We are ignorant. You know what? I would call it dumb on purpose. We just are stuck on stupid. Sorry. It's true. We want to make everything about Jesus. We've got to dig deeper. We've got to get better understandings. We've learned lies, worthless and unprofitable things, and they're about to come to the forefront in what's going on in the world. Oh, you got some things to see. So, Genesis doesn't include it, but Jacob gave his sons the way that they were supposed to carry him when they carried him on his bier to Machpelah, Mamre, the land that he bought from Ephron the Hittite, the Hittite. That was very interesting because it's the same way that we're going to camp in the wilderness later on. He doesn't say it here in Yasher or in Genesis, but he says it in Yasher that Levi is not to carry it. Why? Because he is going to be the priest. I'll show it to you. In fact, let me read Genesis. Oh, you know what? Maybe I'll just go to it. It doesn't take very long. Here it is right here. He's talking about how they're supposed to carry the bier. Where is it here? Here it is. Judah, Issachar, Zebulun will carry the east side. Reuben, Simeon, Gad, the south side. Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin, the west side. And Dan, Asher, and Naphtali, the north side. Let not Levi carry with you, for he and his sons will carry the ark of the covenant of Yehovah with the Israelites in the camp. Oh my goodness, talk about prophetic. How does he know there's going to be an ark of the covenant? He was on it. Jacob knew what was going on. He wanted to be buried back in that land. He said, Joseph will not carry also because he's the king. Remember, Levi got the priestly blessing. Judah got the kingly blessing. And Joseph got the birthright. That's why he's got Ephraim and Manasseh, 2 tribes in Israel. It all fits together when you start to see the big picture. Okay, so we left off with Jacob, ceased commanding his sons, and he drew in his feet into the bed and died and was gathered to his people. We're going to read Genesis 50 first. Let's go there. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for him, for such are the days required for those who are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned him for 70 days. Listen, even the Egyptians mourned Jacob. We're going to see when they come back to the land of Canaan that even the Canaanites are going to mourn Jacob. Everybody loved Jacob. 40 days were required for him, for such are the days required for those who, I said that, the Egyptians mourned him. Now, when the days of mourning were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh. Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh. He didn't speak to Pharaoh directly. In Yasher, he speaks to Pharaoh directly, saying, if now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the hearing of Pharaoh, saying, my father made me swear, saying, behold, I'm dying. In my grave, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now, therefore, please let me go and bury my father, and I will come back. Now it's got Pharaoh talking directly to him. He was talking to the house of Pharaoh, but now Pharaoh's talking to him. Go up, bury your father, as he made you swear. And Joseph went up to bury his father. And with him went all Pharaoh's avedi. How do they say it? All Pharaoh's Avde. This is very interesting because it's kind of like B'nai Avde. Servants, Aved, is Avde when we're talking about Avde Pharaoh. It's the same construction that we see with B'nai Israel, Israel's seed, Pharaoh's servants. It's the same construction. I think it's interesting to see that. So who are all Pharaoh's servants? Are these all the men of the land? Remember, they're not ladies, they're Aved, Avedim. But these are Pharaoh's Avedim, so it's Avde. All Pharaoh's servants, the elders of his house, the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as the house of Joseph, his brothers, his father's house. Only their little ones, their flocks, their herds, they left in the land of Goshen. The little ones, the Toth is what they're talking about here. Here's the word Toth, is families. He's leaving the ladies and the children with, did he take the servants of Pharaoh's servants? I think they took their servants. What did it say? Joseph, all of the house of Joseph, his brother and his father's house. His brothers and his father's house. Were they the servants probably that went to? It very likely is the servants, male servants, not female servants. The ladies and the children were left behind. This is a job for men. Men. The elders of the house. The elders of the land of Egypt, the elders of Pharaoh's house. Yes. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. And it was a very great gathering. This is like the condensed version of what happened. I think that Torah was much broader and expansive when it was originally written than it is in what we have today. I think what we have today is very, very redacted. Things have been left out on purpose. They don't want us to see certain things. They. Who's they? Who publishes all the books in the world? It's the they. It's the Khazarians. Dare I say the Zionist Jews? Oh, we've got a lot to learn. We say they our whole life. They do it again. Who are they? We're beginning to find out who that they are. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan. And they mourned there with a great and very solemn lamentation. He observed 7 days of mourning for his father. Who's he? I would guess it's Joseph. Beyond the Jordan. This is such a strange thing. Look at this. Here's a map. They're coming from Egypt. Probably Ramses, this area in here. Remember, we've been gathering in Goshen up here in the Delta. But we're going to come all the way of Shur, all the way up here to Hebron. There's Hebron right there. I don't know if you can see it. I could zoom in, but I want to show you something first. Where is the Jordan? Beyond the Jordan? Where is the Jordan? There's no Jordan. The Jordan is way up here. Here's the Jordan. This is the Jordan River right here. Moses talked about beyond the Jordan when he was on the east side talking about the west side. The outside talking about the inside. I got a hunch that when we talk about beyond the Jordan, we're talking about the outside of Egypt versus the inside of Egypt. This place that we're visiting, what was it called? Atad, is inside Canaan. I said Egypt a second when I said outside Canaan and inside Canaan. I said Egypt, I meant Canaan. So now, possibly is the brook of Egypt, was that the boundary for Egypt versus Canaan? I wonder. If it was, it could be that the Atad was somewhere in this area after we crossed the river and came into the land of Canaan, beyond the Jordan. Again, inside Canaan and outside Canaan. That's all I can figure. Let me read my note here because it'll help you to understand this better, as it helped me to understand it better. This was from Easton. It says, when used with reference to Jordan, it signifies the writing of Moses, the west side of the river, as he wrote on the east bank. So he's talking about, when he says beyond the Jordan, he's talking about the west side of the river when he's on the east side of the river. Then in Yasher, it says this, and Joseph went up with a heavy camp. I'm reading right here. Joseph went up with a heavy camp, and they did after this manner every day until they reached the land of Canaan. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad. Could the Atad be in the land of Canaan, which was on the other side of the Jordan? There you go, inside Canaan. And they mourned an exceedingly great and heavy mourning in that place. Yes, I think that's exactly what we're talking about. So when they came to the threshing floor of Atad, they're now in Canaan. And look what happens. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, this is deep mourning of the Egyptians. Therefore its name was called Aval Mitzrayim, which is beyond the Jordan. There it is again, which is beyond the Jordan. They almost make you think Aval Mitzrayim means beyond the Jordan. No, I don't think it does. Here is Avel Mitzrayim. It means meadow, Avel, meadow, or a place in Palestine. Egypt. No. Where was it? Meadow of Egypt, place in Palestine. I thought Moses taking Canaan as the central Moses taking Canaan as the central standpoint of the whole history uses the phrase beyond the Jordan for, see, now they say beyond the Jordan for east of it. I think beyond the Jordan is supposed to be for west of it. Well, obviously you can see there's some definite confusion in this, but it looks to me by what we were just reading here was until they reached the land of Canaan, and they reached the land of Canaan, and they came to the threshing floor. They're in Canaan. This is where Atad is. Makes sense. The Canaanites aren't going to leave the land of Canaan and go into Egypt's land. They waited until Egypt came to them. By the way, what did they think? Canaan. Did they have any concern that all these armed men were coming into their land? They knew Jacob had died. They knew they were going to be bringing him back. But there's got to be a little bit of anxiety thinking all these men are coming into your land on the pretext of burying Jacob. Could be a sign for war. Who knows? So his sons did for him just as he had commanded them, carried him just as he had commanded him. Now look what it says. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan, buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite as property for a burial place. And after they buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt. That's all I got to say about it. He and his brothers and all who went up with him to bury his father. Talk about redacted. Wait until you hear what Yasher's got to say. Oh my goodness. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for the evil which we did to him. They knew they had done wrong. So they sent messengers to Joseph saying, before your father died, your father died. Your father, not our father, your father died. He commanded, saying, thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin. For they did evil to you. Now please forgive their trespass. Please forgive the trespass of thy father's Elohim's servants, is what they're saying here. They said the servants of Elohim, of your father. Thy father's Elohim's servants is what it says in the Hebrew. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. What happened at the cave the day Jacob was buried? They just brought him up and buried him. Went back to Egypt. This is all Genesis says about this day. Yasher has so much more to say. This was a day that Jacob's twin Esau died as well. Why does Genesis leave this event out? Do you think maybe this was important? Why is it being redacted? Severely redacted. And why is it always to make Esau look good and not bad? So you got to ask yourself these kinds of questions. Remember when Jacob and Esau was introduced, Jacob was the mild man, the mama's boy, the pansy boy. Esau was the mighty hunter. They always make Esau look good. But Esau is a very wicked man. When Jacob went to Hebron, remember it was Eliphaz who was supposed to catch up with Jacob, take all his money and kill him. Well, he ended up taking the money, but he didn't kill him. All he got to keep was his staff, the rod of Elohim. And that's what he entered Hebron with. But they don't tell you that Esau took all his stuff. They leave it out. Why? There's a reason for that. Let me continue. 18. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we are your servants. Joseph said to them, Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of Elohim? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but Elohim meant it for good in order to bring it about as it is this day to save many people alive. Yes, that's what it was all about. Now, therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your families. This is again tough, but it's your tough. Y'all's families, as V would say. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's household. And Joseph lived 110 years. He lived 110 years. The brothers are going to live 71 years. From the time Jacob came in to the time Joseph dies is going to be 71 years having Joseph with them and providing for them, giving them preference over most of the Egyptians. He provided for Israel. Now, look at the next verse and last verse. Is this last verse? Maybe it's not. Not quite. Joseph was, this is interesting. I thought I had another note here. It was, I guess it's down below here. Joseph was Ephraim's, Joseph saw Ephraim's sons to the third, may even be seed, Ephraim's seed. Oh, it is Ephraim's seed. There it is right there. I put the note in it. Ephraim's seed. Saw Ephraim's seed to the third generation. And Makar's seed, Makar ben Manasseh's seed, were also brought up on Joseph's need. This is fascinating to me because we were talking about, I had a conversation with somebody this week about Zelophehad's daughters. And did you know that Zelophehad was the great-great-grandson of Makar? There's Makar ben Manasseh, ben Jacob. So when we talk about Makar's seed, one of Makar's seed is Zelophehad. And this whole story was about the women who Zelophehad had no sons, and so he had land. Where was the land going to go? Can't give it to the women. So what they decided was the women had to marry somebody in the tribe of Manasseh so that the land stayed in the tribe, and they married their cousins. In fact, I thought it was really interesting because they say right here, I guess I rewrote it. They approached the daughters of Zelophehad, ben Hefer, ben Gilad, ben Machir, ben Manasseh, from the clan of Manasseh, Joseph's seed, and daughters. And these are the names of the daughters. I guess it's in the next verse. Just as Yehovah commanded Moses, so the daughters of Zelophehad gives their names: Mahlah, Tirzah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Noah, the daughters of Zelophehad. It says they married. Torah says married. But this says they became Hayah. They became their brother's seed. Remember what I said, when a woman joins herself to man, she becomes he. I think when it says they became their brother's seed, this is exactly what we're talking about. It's so interesting. Gotta dig deeper. You want to find the truth, line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. That's how we figure it out. Last verse. Last verse. No, not like that. Almost. And Joseph said to his brethren, I'm dying, but Elohim will surely visit you and bring you out of this land which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Now, this is kind of what it says in Yasher, but it's not what it says in Yasher. Elohim will surely visit you and bring you out of the land of which he swore, bring you to the land which he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But this doesn't talk about Moses being raised up. Do you see the difference? We're missing things. Then Joseph took an oath from Israel's seed, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry my bones up from here. Remember, this is talking about Joseph. Oh, maybe I'm confused. Joseph said to his brother, I'm dying. Yeah, this is Joseph who's dying right now. And he's still saying that Yehovah's going to bring him back to the land. Okay, no, that's fine. That's what Jacob said. Maybe that's why he's saying it. So Joseph took an oath from Israel's seed, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. Sons of Israel. Joseph came to Israel when he was 17 years old. He became king when he was 30 years old. After 13 years, 12 years in prison, 13 years, or 1 year serving in, what was that man's house? I forget right offhand. It's not really that important. He ended up ruling, so if he became king at 30 and he ruled to 80, that means I ruled to 110. That means he ruled for 80 years in Egypt. He lived 93 years in Egypt. Oh, so very interesting. Well, let's find out what Yasher has to say about this. I think we're going to see some significant differences. Here it is. And Joseph fell on his father's face, and he cried out and wept over him, and he kissed him, and he called out in a bitter voice, and he said, Avi, Avi, my father, my father. And his sons, women, and all the household came and fell upon Jacob, and they wept over him. This is the women and the children. Wept over him and cried in a very loud voice concerning Jacob. And all Jacob's seed rose up together, and they tore their garments, and they all put sackcloth on their loins, and they fell upon their faces, and they cast dust upon their heads towards the heaven. Dust upon their heads towards the heaven. Sounds like they're throwing it up in the sky, and the dust is falling down on their heads. And the thing was told Asenat, Joseph's woman, and she rose up and put on a sack. And she, with all the Egyptian women with her, came and mourned and wept for Jacob. And also all the people of Egypt, here it is again, all the people of Egypt who knew Jacob all on that day when they heard this thing. And all Egypt wept for many days. It must have taken a long time for all those people to go through and give their respects to Jacob. And also from the land of Canaan did the women come unto Egypt when they heard that Jacob was dead. They wept for him in Egypt for 70 days. So even the ladies from Canaan were coming to see Jacob, to mourn Jacob. And it came to pass after that Joseph commanded his servants, the doctors, to embalm his father with myrrh and frankincense and all manner of incense and perfume. And the doctors embalmed Jacob as Joseph had commanded. And all the people of Egypt and the elders and all the inhabitants of the land of Goshen wept and mourned over Jacob and all his sons and the children of his household, lamented and mourned over their father Jacob for many days. And after the days of his weeping had passed, at the end of 70 days, remember they embalmed him for 40 days and they mourned over him for 70 days. Joseph said, and that's just exactly what it says in Torah here too. 40 days were required for him, for such were the days of those who are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. Exactly the same thing. And Pharaoh sent Joseph saying, oh, look at this. No, here it is. Joseph said to Pharaoh. So this now is not talking to Pharaoh's household. This has him talking directly to Pharaoh, which I would think he did. Joseph said unto Pharaoh, I will go up and bury my father in the land of Canaan as he made me swear, and then I will return. And Pharaoh sent Joseph saying, yeah, that makes it sound like maybe he didn't talk directly to Pharaoh, like maybe he was saying something to Pharaoh. Maybe it's correct in Torah. Because this says that Pharaoh sent Joseph saying, he didn't talk to Joseph, he sent Joseph saying, go up and bury your father as he said, and as he made thee swear. And Joseph rose up with all his brethren to go to the land of Canaan to bury their father Jacob, as he had commanded them. And Pharaoh commanded that it should be proclaimed throughout Egypt, saying, whoever goes not up with Joseph and his brethren to the land of Canaan to bury Jacob shall die. Sounds to me like all the men of Egypt were required to go up with Joseph to bury Jacob. And all Egypt heard Pharaoh's proclamation, and they all rose up together, all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of the house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt went up with Joseph, and all the officers and nobles of Pharaoh went up as the servants of Joseph, and they went to bury Jacob in the land of Canaan. And Jacob's seed carried the bier upon which he lay, according to all that their father commanded them. So did his sons unto him. Here it is right here. Let me pull this up. Right here. Should be opening. Come on. Did it not come up? Try it again. Oh, there it goes. Yeah. So this is how they're carrying. Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Gad, Simeon, Manasseh, west, Benjamin, Manasseh, Ephraim on the west, and Dan, Asher, Naphtali on the north. And then we had the Levites taking care of the tabernacle and camping inside of everybody else in the wilderness. But Levi followed. when they went to Egypt, or when they went to Hebron. And the bar was of pure gold. It was inlaid round about with onyx stones and bdellium. And the covering of the bar was gold woven work joined with threads. The covering of the bar. It's a gold bar, but it sounds like there's a covering. Maybe it went over the top of Jacob also, kind of like a cloth that was embedded with gold, inlaid rounds, was inlaid. The bar and the covering of the bar was gold woven work joined with threads. And over them were hooks of onyx stones and bdellium. That sounds like a covering maybe for Jacob. And Joseph placed upon the head of his father a large golden crown, and he put a golden scepter in his hand. And they surrounded the bar, as was the custom of kings during their lives. You know what? Torah says nothing about this. Look at the great honor that Jacob received, not only from the Egyptians, but we're going to see even from Canaan. Everybody loved Jacob. Why is it left out of Torah? Do you think maybe this might be important? That if you're a man of Elohim, you're going to be regarded highly? Something's wrong. And all the troops of Egypt went before him in this array. At first, all the mighty men of Pharaoh and the mighty men of Joseph, and after them the rest of the inhabitants of Egypt. And they were all girded with swords and equipped with coats of mail and trappings of war were upon them. This is why I say, are the Canaanites' anxiety going up when they see all these men coming into their land? And all the weepers and mourners went at a distance opposite to the buyer, going and weeping and lamenting, and the rest of the people went after the buyer. And Joseph and his household went together near the buyer barefoot and weeping. And the rest of Joseph's servants went around him. Each man had his ornaments upon him, and they were all armed with weapons of war. And 50 of Jacob's servants, this is why I say the servants went too, Avadim, Jacob's Avday, remember that's how we wrote it, went in front of the buyer, and they strew along the road myrrh and aloes and all manner of perfume. And all Jacob's seed had carried the buyer, walked upon the perfumery, and Jacob's seed went before them. Jacob's servants went before them, strewing the perfume along the road. That's a little bit redundant. That's what they said at the beginning of this verse. And Joseph went up with a heavy camp, and they did after this manner every day until they reached the land of Canaan. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which was on the other side of the Jordan. That's why I say I think it's in the land of Canaan. And they mourned an exceeding great and heavy mourning in that place. And all the kings of Canaan heard of this thing, and they went forth, each man from his house, 31 kings of Canaan. And they all came with their men to mourn and weep over Jacob. These are interesting men. Remember, they knew Jacob. They loved Jacob. And these kings beheld Jacob's buyer. And behold, Joseph's crown was upon it. And they also put their crown upon the buyer and encircled it with crowns. And all the kings made in that place a great and heavy mourning with Jacob's seed, and Egypt over Jacob. For all the kings of Canaan knew the valor of Jacob and his sons. And the report reached Esau. Oh, now it gets interesting. The report reached Esau saying, Jacob died in Egypt. and his sons and all Egypt are conveying him to the land of Canaan to bury him. And Esau heard this thing, and he was dwelling in Seir. He rose up with his sons and all his people and all his household, a people exceedingly great, and they came to mourn and weep for Jacob. Oh, what a nice boy. And it came to pass, when Esau came, he mourned for his brother Jacob, and all Egypt and all Canaan again rose up and mourned a great mourning with Esau over Jacob in that place. And Joseph and his brethren brought their father Jacob from that place, and they went to Hebron to bury Jacob in the cave by his fathers, Abraham and Isaac. And they came to Kirjath Arba, to the cave. And they came, and as they came, Esau stood with his sons against Joseph and his brethren as a hindrance in the cave, saying, Jacob shall not be buried therein, for it belongs to us and to our father. Did it? We're going to find out differently. He is lying. He's a liar. And Joseph and his brethren heard the words of Esau and were exceedingly wroth. Joseph approached unto Esau. This is Joseph. Approached unto Esau, saying, what is this thing which you have spoken? Surely my father Jacob bought it from thee for great riches, after the death of Isaac, like everything he had. All they got was the land of Canaan and the cave, and the Canaanites were dwelling in Canaan. Now 5 and 20 years ago, I think it's more like 27 years ago. And also the land of Canaan he bought from thee and from thy sons and thy seed after thee, from all of Esau's people. Not only the ones who were there at the time, but the ones who are going to come in the future, that seed. And Jacob bought it for his sons and his seed after him for an inheritance forever. And why speakest thou these things this day? And Esau answered, saying, thou speakest falsely and utterest lies. For I sold not anything belonging to me in the land, as thou sayest. Neither did my brother Jacob buy aught belonging to me in this land. He didn't buy anything from me. Then how come he didn't get any of the people, the riches, the cattle, all the stuff that Jacob had? And Esau spoke these things in order to deceive Joseph with his words, for Esau knew that Joseph was not present in those days when Esau sold all belonging to him in the land of Canaan to Jacob. No, he wasn't there. He was in prison at the time. And Joseph said to Esau, surely my father inserted these things with thee in a record of purchase, and testified the record with witnesses. And behold, it is with us in Egypt. Here it is. This is what it said. This is from Yasher 47. And Nebaioth said, what is this that Jacob has spoken to thee? Behold, all the children, all Canaan's seed are dwelling securely in the land. And Jacob says he will inherit it and his seed all the days. Remember, Jacob gave Esau the choice. You can have the land or you can have all my father's stuff. Ishmael said, take the stuff. The Canaanites have the land. But Jacob knew the promise that remember, the land and the seed. That's what it was always about, the land and the seed. Well, here it is. And Jacob saith he will inherit it with his seed all the days. That's the land and the seed. Go now, therefore, and take thy father's riches, and leave Jacob thy brother in the land, as he has spoken. So Esau rose up and returned to Jacob and did as Nebaioth, the son of Ishmael, had advised. And Esau took all the riches that Isaac had left, the souls, that's the servants, the beasts, the cattle, and beasts, probably the sheep and goats, and the property and all the riches. He gave nothing to his brother Jacob. And Jacob took the land of Canaan from the brook of Egypt, look at that, brook of Egypt, onto the Euphrates. That's how big Canaan was supposed to be. We never got it all that. We never took it all. And he took it as an everlasting possession for his sons, and his seed after him forever. Jacob also took from his brother Esau the cave at Machpelah, which is in Hebron, which Abram had bought from Ephraim as a possession of a burial place for him and his seed forever. Jacob wrote all these things in a book of purchase, and he signed it, and he testified all this with faithful witnesses. And these are the words which Jacob wrote in the book, saying, the land of Canaan and all the cities of the Hittites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, and the Girgashites, all 7 nations from the river of Egypt onto the river Euphrates, and the city of Hebron, just Arbah, that's then the cave which is in it. The whole did Jacob buy from his brother Esau for value, for a possession and an inheritance for his seed after him forever. And Jacob took the book of the purchase and signature and commanded the command and signature, the command and the statutes of the revealed book, and he placed them in an earthen vessel in order that they should remain for a long time, and he delivered them into the hands of his sons. Well, that was a mouthful, but you see, this was all taken care of, and Esau is once again lying. And Esau answered, saying unto him, bring the record. All that thou wilt find in the record, so will we do. So Joseph called unto Naphtali. I think it's funny, he called to Naphtali, his brother. And he said, hasten quickly, stay not, and run, I pray thee, to Egypt, and bring all the records. Naphtali was the fastest runner. The record of the purchase, the sealed record, the open record, and all the first records in which all the transactions of the birthright are written. Fetch thou, and thou shalt bring them unto us hither, that we may know from them all the words of Esau and his sons, which they spoke this day. And Naphtali hearkened to the voice of Joseph, and he hastened and ran to go down to Egypt. And Naphtali was lighter on foot than any of the stags that were upon the wilderness, for he could go upon the ears of corn without crushing them. And when Esau saw that Naphtali had gone to fetch the records, remember, he knows what's in the records, he and his sons increased their resistance against the cave. And Esau and all his people rose up against Joseph and his brethren to battle. They're beginning to fight. We got a brouhaha going on. And all Jacob's seed and the people of Egypt fought with Esau and his men. And Esau's seed and his people were smitten before Jacob's seed. And Jacob's seed slew of Esau's people 40 men. And Cushim, the son of Dan, Cushim ben Dan. Remember, when we did 46, Dan only had one son, Cushim. Well, it turns out Cushim is deaf and dumb. Maybe that's why he didn't have any more sons with that woman, perhaps. Cushim, the son of Dan, Cushim ben Dan, ben Jacob, was at that time with Jacob's sons. But he was about 100 cubits distance from the place of the battle, about 180 feet away. Half a football field. No, a little bit more than half a football field. And he remained with Jacob's son's seeds by Jacob's buyer to guard it. And Cushim was dumb and deaf. Still, he understood the voice of consternation among men. And he asked, saying, why do you not bury the dead? And what is this great consternation? And they answered him the words of Esau and his sons. And he ran to Esau in the midst of the battle, and he slew Esau with a sword. He cut off his head, and it sprang to a distance, and Esau fell amongst the people of the battle. Oh, so interesting. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Look at this. Esau dies just like he lived. Remember what Esau did to Nimrod? And all Nimrod's mighty men and his people were with him in the wilderness. Oh, I didn't put the chapter in this one for where it was in Yasher. Were with him in the wilderness. And they removed at a distance from him, and they went from him in a different direction to hunt. And Esau concealed himself from Nimrod, and he lurked for him in the wilderness. And Nimrod and his men that were with him did not know him. And Nimrod and his men frequently walked about in the field in the cool of the day to know where his men were hunting in the field. And Nimrod and 2 of his men that were with him came to the place where they were when Esau started suddenly from his lurking place and drew his sword and hastened and ran to Nimrod and cut off his head. Well, this is murder. Thou shalt not murder. This is murder. What he did to Nimrod, unprovoked. What Dan did, what Cushim did was not murder. That was battle. And when Cushim did this thing, Jacob's seed prevailed over Esau's seed. And Jacob's seed buried their father Jacob by force in the cave. And Esau's seed beheld it. And Jacob was buried in Hebron, in the cave of Machpelah, which Abraham had bought from Ket's seed for the possession of a burial place, and he was buried in very costly garments. No king had such honor paid him as Joseph paid unto his father at his death, for he buried him with great honor, like unto the burial of kings. And Joseph and his brethren made a mourning for 7 days for their father. Now, I've got a few more verses I want to read before we quit for the day. And it was after, what's going on here? Oh, come on, stop. Oh, this is not good. I don't even know where I was. So it's grand. Oh, we got to go down here. I pushed a button and it got stuck. Just started scrolling. And here we are. It was after this that Esau's seed waged war with Jacob's seed. And Esau's seed fought with Jacob's seed in Hebron. And Esau was still lying dead and not buried. And the battle was heavy between them. And Esau's seed were smitten before Jacob's seed. And Jacob's seed slew of the sons of Esau 80 men. And not one died of the people of Jacob's seed. And the hand of Joseph prevailed over all the people of Esau's seed. And he took Zepho, the son of Eliphaz. No, Zepho ben Eliphaz, ben Esau. He took Esau's grandson. Eliphaz was his firstborn. And Zepho, I think, was the firstborn of Eliphaz. And 50 of his men captive. And he bound them with chains of iron and gave them into the hand of his servants to bring them to Egypt. We're going to talk about these men next week in much more detail. And it came to pass when Jacob's seed had taken Zepho and his people captive, all those that remained were greatly afraid of their lives from from the house of Esau, from Esau's house, lest they should also be taken captive. And they fled with Eliphaz ben Esau and his people, with Esau's body, and they went on the road to Mount Seir. They took his body, they left his head. And they came to Mount Seir, and they buried Esau in Seir, but they had not brought his head with them to Seir, for it was buried in the place where the battle had been in Hebron. And it came to pass, when Esau's seed had fled from before Jacob's seed, that Jacob's seed pursued them unto the border of Seir. But they did not slay a single man from amongst them when they pursued them, for Esau's body which they carried had excited their confusion. So they fled, and Jacob's seed turned back from them and came up to the place where their brethren were in Hebron, and they remained there on that day and on the next day until they rested from the battle. And we're going to stop here. We're going to pick it up next week. Oh, this is going to be so interesting. Wait till you see. Talking about rumors of wars. Things are happening. Esau's seed is not good people. Remember, Esau killed Nimrod. Why? Because he wanted to get the garments that Ham had given to Nimrod that made Nimrod great. Esau wants to rule the world. And that's why he didn't need the birthright. You can have the birthright. I've got the garments. Ooh, you know what? I wonder, do they still have the garments? What do you think? Is Esau and the Khazarians, the Zionist Jews, are they all the same people? I wonder. I think it's possible. Well, time is going to tell. But next week, we're going to pick up this story. We're not going to talk about Khazarians next week. That's what's going on in the world right now. But we're going to stop here. Thank you so much for joining me. And we'll talk again next time, okay? All right. Have a wonderful day. Bye now.